Masechet Nedarim Daf Kaf Dalid. In yesterday's daf, we saw Mishnah that gives the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, who says that a person that makes a vow against his friend that you better come eat with me, or else I'm never going to talk to you again. That vow is also from the first Mishnah is called Neder Zeruzin. We added some words in the daf yesterday to this, so that Rabbi Eliezer is said to say that someone who makes a vow like that, that's called Nidre Zeruzin. And in Neder Zeruzin, the same as when the merchant says, I won't sell this for $1 less than $4, that's null and void because he doesn't mean it in the first place. So too, the host that said, you better come and eat with me or else I'm not going to talk to you, is Nidre Zeruzin, and therefore is null and void. You don't even have to do anything to undo it. That is the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. Now we're going to ask a question. Does everyone agree with him? Ibayalehu. Peligi Rabbanan aled Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. Ola. Do the rabbis disagree with him, or do they agree with him? So we're going to prove it from a few different Mishnayot and Baraitot. Second question: if the rabbis in fact do prohibit such vows, in other words, if you make such a vow, then it is a valid vow and creates a prohibition. Is the halacha like Rabbi Eliezer, or is it like the rabbis? Okay. Tashema. So first proof, Ditnan. We're going to try to prove that in fact the rabbis disagree with Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. We're going to see that in the progression, by the time we get to the end, we're going to actually say halacha is like Rabbi Eliezer. We'd like to be lenient and not have to, and so that these should be permitted. I guess people were saying these vows a lot, and the rabbis didn't want to give people a hard time because they figured that people don't really mean them. Okay, but we're going to have to first see, because if it is in fact Rabbanan that disagree with them, then it's going to be harder to decide that halacha is like Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. So we have a Mishnah later on that says, Ditnan, ha'omer lachavero, kunam she'eni nehene lecha im ata notel libincha kor shel chitin ushte habiyot shel yain hare ze yachol latir et nidro shelo al pi chacham. Someone says, I'm going to be like a korban. You are prohibited. I am prohibited from benefiting from you if you do not take from me this gift of a quart of wheat, 2 barrels of wine, and I want to give it to your son. And I'm insisting that I want to give you a gift, and if you don't receive this gift from me, then I'm going to prohibit you I'm going to prohibit myself from benefiting from you ever, right? I don't want this to be a one-way transaction. People like when they give and they take. So he makes this vow. In this case, he says this is he can undo it himself. Because she'achol omar lo kilum amarta ela bishvil kevodi zehu kevodi. In this case, the person that I give the gift to, that person, the receiver, can say, listen, I know you only made this vow because you want to honor me, and that's why you want me to take this gift. But really, my honor is to not take the gift from you, right? I will feel honored by you keeping the gift. So, should the receiver say that, then it turns out that the vow is undone, right? He doesn't have to even go to a chacham. He can just say undo the vow himself, because his intention was to honor the receiver, and the receiver says, I am already honored by you just offering the gift and by not receiving it. Okay, so now we're going to analyze this Mishnah. Tamad amar zehu kevodi, halav achi nederhu. So the only reason why the neder is undone is because the receiver says, it's my honor for you to keep your gift. Thank you anyway. I appreciate the gesture. But if he didn't say that, then it would be a valid vow, right? It's not for that out that the receiver gives by saying that. Otherwise, it would be a valid vow. So that means, even though it's a vow of exhortation, it's a neder zeruzin, I'm the giver, and I'm saying, I want you to receive it, or else I'll make a vow. If you don't receive it, my gift, then I'll be prohibited to you. You'll be prohibited to me. So even though that's a neder zeruzin, that would apply unless the receiver gives an out that says, that's my honor. So we see this type of neder zeruzin is in fact valid. Now, who could be the author of this Mishnah? Maneh. If it's Eliezer ben Yaakov, that's the same as the case in our Mishnah, and that is called a neder zeruzin. And Rabbi Eliezer is the one that said that is null and void, right? That's the case. You better come over for a meal, or else I'll make you prohibited. And Rabbi Eliezer already said that's null and void. So this Mishnah cannot be the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. Rather, this Mishnah must be the opinion of the majority of the rabbis, and the majority of rabbis say this kind of vow of exhortation, it does take effect in the general case, unless you have some kind of out. And so the rabbis must disagree with him, right? Well, not necessarily le'olam Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. We can explain this Mishnah even according to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. There's a difference between the cases. Moder Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov b'hai de nidra have damar le la kalba'ana de mi tahanina minach vela mitanet minai. Because in this case, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says the person making the vow does mean it, and even really does mean it, unless the guy doesn't give an out, because the person giving the gift says, what am I, a dog, that I benefit from you and you won't benefit from me? This is not nice what you're doing, right? Ironically, you think people will always want to receive, but it's not true. People want to give also, right? By having only receiving, person feels lower down. Like what? You can only give me, but I can't give you? This is the manner of a dog. A dog receives from its owner, but a dog doesn't give anything back to its owner. So by treating me in this way, by you'll give me a present, but you won't accept my present, I'm actually angry at you, and I mean for the vow to be valid. So even Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, who says in general, neder zeruzin, like a case of hosting, would be invalid, but in this instance, the person means for it to really be valid, because it's really insulting if a person will not accept your gift, unless they say, "Oh, it's my honor for you to keep it," and then they're saying something nice to me, so then I feel better. But otherwise, everyone would agree, even Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, that such a neder is valid. Okay, so let's try again. Tashema, haomer lachavero, kunam she'ata nehenita li, im ata noten libni, kor shel chitin ushne habiyot shel yayin. So this is a continuation of the Mishnah we just mentioned, and now this is the opposite way. Someone says, korban, right? Benefiting from me is korban to you. I'm making myself prohibited to you. If you don't give me, for my son, a quart of wheat and 2 barrels of wine, right? I'm demanding that you give me a hand, help me out to provide for my son. Now, what would be the law here? Rabbi Meir omed ad she'iten. Rabbi Meir says the vow is valid, and in fact, I won't have any benefit from you. You won't be able to have any benefit from me until you actually give the wine, the wheat, and the wine. However, Chachamim omerim, af ze yachol latir et nidro shelo al pi chacham, sheyachol lomar hareni ki'ilu hitkabalti. Chachamim say, no, there's a way to undo this vow even without going to a sage, because I can let you out of it by saying, you know what, I'll consider it as if I received the gift from you, right? If in the end you don't give me the gift, and now I feel bad, I don't want this vow to actually be true, that you can get no benefit from me. So, I'll say, I forego. I know you said you're supposed to give it to me. I'll consider it like I received it, and that's sufficient for me to feel satisfied, and the vow is done. Okay, now that's the Mishnah. Let's analyze. Tama damar hareni ki'ilu hitkabalti. The only reason I can get out of this vow is by saying, I feel like you gave it to me. I consider it as if. But let's say not. Halav hachi. If I don't think that and don't say that, nederhu, then it is a valid vow, right? If I still feel a grudge and feel upset that you don't help me out, all right, I'll help you all the time. You don't help me out when I need it. So then it is a valid vow. Okay, Mani, who could be the author of this Mishnah? According to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, from the Mishnah, he says that a neder of encouragement like this should be invalid. And so it's true, I said this in order to encourage you to give a gift to my son of wheat and wine. And that's all I meant, is to encourage you, and therefore it's null and void. And so it'll be null and void no matter what. Even if I didn't say, I'll consider it as if I received it. Ela lav Rabbanan upelige. So rather, this Mishnah must be the opinion of Rabbanan, and the majority does in fact disagree with Rabbi Eliezer, and they think that a plain old neder zeruzin is binding. Right? So that's a good proof that Rabbanan disagree. We say, no, le'olam, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, even Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov may very well agree with this Mishnah. ומודה רבי אליעזר בהי נדרה הווה, משום דאמר לה, לאו מלכה אנא, דמתהננה לך, ואת לה מהנית לי. In this case, Rabbi Eliezer would agree that the person is going to feel a real grudge and really want to make a vow. Because the person, the one who's asking for a gift, says, what am I, a king, that I provide benefit to you and you don't give anything back to me? Right, we have a long-standing relationship. I always give you gifts. And now I'm asking, I say, listen, my son needs some help now. Can you give him a gift? If not, I'm going to make a vow against you that we're going to have no benefit ever again. And so a person really feels that grudge, right? Person, on the one hand, doesn't want to feel like a dog that he always receives and never gives. Person also, if they're not a king, if they're not that rich, they can't afford to always give and never receive. You're not being fair. So in this case, the person really means the vow, and therefore it's not just a neder zeruzin, he actually means it. That's why Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says that. But in a regular case of neder zeruzin, like a host saying, I want you to come over, or else I'm not going to talk to you ever again, that, in fact, would be invalid. Okay, so far so good. Now another proof that the rabbis disagree. Amar le mor kashisha bered Rav Chisda Rav Asher Tashema nidre onasin. There's another Mishnah coming up in a few dapim. Hediro chavero sheyochal etzlo vechalahu o chala beno o shikebo nahar. So there's another category of a neder that is null and void to begin with, and that is not to begin with. Another that is becomes null and void, and that is one that is violated because of circumstances beyond one's controls. Honest. So if I said, hey, listen, you better come over, and if you don't come over for a meal, then I'm never talking to you again. But in the end, the guest got sick, or his son got sick and has to take care of him, or the river was unable to cross it, he wasn't able to get there. Right? The guest, as much as he tried, he would not have been able to get to the host. So now, does the host have to upkeep that vow? No, this is a neder that was honest. The guest tried to get there, but it was beyond his control. So this neder is void. Okay, halav hachi neder hu. What do we learn from this? If not that the guest got sick and wasn't able to come, if he just decided, I don't feel like coming, then the neder would be valid. And now that the guest said, you can't talk to me ever again, or I'm not talking to you ever again, that would be upheld. Okay, let's see. Maneh, who's the author of this Mishnah? It can't be Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov because this is a neder zeruzin. He's saying, I want you to come over for a meal, or else I won't talk to you again. And so this is just a regular exhortation. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov already said that this is not a binding vow. And we just proved that it would be a binding vow. So it must be the Rabbanan. And the Rabbanan, in fact, disagree. And they are machmir on such neder zeruzin. And we say, not necessarily, le'olam, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. That could be Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. Oh, you were interpreting that the host was the one that made the vow in order to encourage the guest to come. But it could be that the guest is the one that requested the host make a vow. La dezamina adreh limzamene. It could be that the guest requested, hey, can you make a vow that you're going to invite me? And here's what happened. The guest was saying, hey, can you invite me for a meal? Right? I really want to come over. And the host says, yes, I'll invite you, one day. The guest doesn't believe him, right? Would you vow? You're going to make a vow that you're going to invite me over? And the host says, yes, I make a vow. I want you to really come over, right? And he gives him an invitation. But that's the case we're talking about. And then the guest got sick, or his son got sick, or he couldn't get there, couldn't cross the river. That's what's called a neder ones. This is not a neder zeruzin because the host wasn't pushing to make sure that the guest will come. The host was actually somewhat reluctant. He's like, okay, you want to come? Fine. It was actually the guest that was pushing himself and saying, hey, make a neder because I want to really make sure that you mean it, that you're not just giving me a fake invitation. I want to make sure you mean it, that I can really come over. So in this case, when the host made the neder, it was not to exhort, to encourage. He wasn't just saying random words. This was a real neder. Really make a vow, the guest says, so that I know that I'm really invited. And so therefore, this in this case is not a neder zeruzin at all. That's why to be Eliezer ben Yaakov would certainly agree in this case that the neder is valid. It would be valid if not that the person actually got sick. If the person gets sick, then you see that it was beyond his control, nothing he could do. So that only for that reason is a neder invalid. Otherwise, it would be valid, and everyone would agree. All right, another proof, Tashema. Yater al ken amar Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. Haomer lechavero, kunam shani nehene lecha, im I ata mitarech etzli, v'tochal imi pat hama, v'tishteh imi kos hamin. A person, a host, says to his friend that to benefit from you is kunam from me. I will not get any benefit from you if you don't come over and eat some hot bread and drink some hot water with me. Okay, so that's the standard case. But here, the guest is now annoyed at him that he's being so pushy. Even that is called a neder zeruzin, and therefore would be null and void, even though it's really unwanted. It's not united. It's like beyond being nice. You're being now pushy. And so therefore be null and void. But veloho dulo chachamim. The end of that Mishnah says, the sages did not agree with him, did not agree with Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. So you see that here, only according to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, is such a neder called neder zeruzin and invalid. Chachamim disagreed. Now let's analyze. What does this mean? Velo du chachamim. Mai lo hodu lo chachamim. What did they disagree about? Lavda afilu bekamaita ushma'mina peligi rabanan aleh shema'mina. When it says they disagree, is it only about this case? Doesn't it also mean regarding the earlier cases that we saw before? And so the rabbis disagree with all the cases, not anything particular about this one. Rather, they disagree in general, and the rabbis say that neder zeruzin is in fact valid. And therefore, Shema Mina, you're right, that's a good proof. There's no way to get around this one, because it says outright that the rabbis disagree with them. And so, even though we were able to somehow fit in the previous Mishnayot and say Rabbi Eliezer would agree, and is the author of them, and if Rabbi Eliezer is author, then it's actually according to everybody that the Neder Zeruzin is invalid, but we see from here that that's not sustainable to the end, and so there are in fact two opinions. The rabbis are more stringent in Neder Zeruzin. Okay, so now that we know, we answered the first question that we started with. Yes, there are in fact two opinions here, but we still left with the other question. What's the halacha? Who does it follow? Ma'haveh ala tashema d'amar Rav Huna halacha ke'Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov v'chen amar Rav Ada bar Ahava halacha ke'Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. In fact, Rav Huna and Rav Ada bar Ahava decided halacha l'maseh that the law is like Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, which is unusual. It's a minority opinion against the majority. Nevertheless, it seemed that they wanted to lighten the burden. They didn't want people to violate vows all the time, and people would always make vows like this to encourage people to come over, take this gift, give me a gift, all kinds of things like this. And then they didn't always come over, they didn't always give the gift, and therefore people would be violating vows left and right. And so, in order to be more accommodating, they decided the halacha is like Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. But I think now we understand why this whole time they were trying to say maybe this is all opinions. Maybe everyone agrees with Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. But even though we couldn't sustain that, nevertheless we say the halacha is the more lenient position. Next Mishnah is about the next category of vows that are void. Nidre Havai, Amar Konam im lo ra'iti baderech hazeh ke'oleh Mitzrayim, im lo ra'iti nahash kekorat bet habad. This is a vow of exaggeration. Everybody knows that you don't really mean these words when you exaggerate this. So if I came from the highway and I said, oh, there were so many people on this road, and it says this bread will be korban, will be prohibited to me if I did not see the number of people like those who left Egypt, 600,000 people. I saw more than that. So this person is exaggerating, and we know he doesn't really mean what he said, and therefore there is no vow. Or if he said, I just saw the snake, it was this big, right? It was as big as a beam of an olive press. Here's an olive press, and you have a beam, and you put weights on the beam, and that presses down against a rock that is on top of the olives that's in these baskets. So there's a very big, wide, long beam. And if you say, I saw a snake this big, then this, if I did not see a snake that big, then I will be prohibited to this bread. Now, he didn't really see a snake that big, and he really didn't see the number of people that are so more than 600,000 people. So therefore, if we take his words literally, then, oh, you didn't see that, so therefore this bread is going to be prohibited to you. But we understand what he meant, that he saw a lot of people. He saw a big snake, and he's just using this as exaggerated language. And so therefore, we do not take his words literally. We understand that he was exaggerating. And therefore, we assume he did see a big snake, even if it wasn't so big. He saw a whole bunch of people. And he did not mean to actually take a vow upon himself if it wasn't actually that big. So there is no vow. That's the Mishnah, no neder. Now the Gemara is going to compare a neder to a shevuah. Braita teaches Tana, Dibre havai mutarin, shevuot havai asurin. On the one hand, a neder that's exaggerated is permitted, as we just saw. But if you say a similar language with a swear, then it's prohibited, because swears are much more stringent. Some deoraita, some midrabanan. The rabbi said we really don't want people to make swears, and so we're going to be more exacting and take your words literally in a swear, and it will be valid. All right, that's the baraita. Gemara is going to explain this. What exactly would be a formula that would be a shevuah that's exaggerated, that would be similar to this neder? If a person says, I make a vow, a swear, shevuah, if I did not see on this road 1,000,000 people. Well, did he say anything? That's not a language, it's not a formula of a shevuah. Shevuah says, I swear that I will exercise, that I didn't exercise tomorrow. Here is making a conditional with nothing afterwards. So this is not a form that makes a shevuah at all. So it can't be that. So Abaye explains, Amar Abaye, Amar shevuah sheraiti. In fact, he says, I make a swear that I saw on this road, I saw 1,000,000 people. And if he did not actually see 1,000,000 people, which he didn't, because you can't see 1,000,000 there, and that was not 1,000,000 people there, we take his words literally, and therefore he made a vain oath, and he will get lashes. That's what it's talking about. So it's not talking about the exact same as the neder. It's not that if I didn't see. He actually said it in a positive if I did see. That's Abaye. Amar le Rava, im ken lama li lememad. Rava says, first of all, there's no chidush. If a person says something about the past that is false, then obviously it's going to be a false shevuah, right? We know shevuot are more stringent, and you wouldn't even have to tell me this case that would be prohibited. And furthermore, the Braita is comparing a neder and shevuah, so it should be the same exact type of neder, and an equivalent type of shevuah. The neder is permitted and the shevuah is prohibited. So your case, they're not the same, because the neder is in negative, and now the shevuah you're saying in positive, I swear that I did see. So, Ella amarava beomer ya'aseru perot ha'olam alai bishvuah im lo ra'iti baderech hazeh ke'oleh Misrayim. Rather, it's a person says, all the fruit in the world should be prohibited to me as a shevuah, not as a neder, not that the fruit is prohibited, but rather I will be prohibited from all the fruit in the world if I did not see on this road 1,000,000 people. And in that case, he will be, we take his words literally, and if he didn't see 1,000,000 people, he will actually be prohibited from eating fruit. And so now this is an equivalent case. It's the same exact. It's a negative. If I didn't see, it's an if, but it has a then also, and it has the fruit there. So it is a formula of a Shevuah, and it is exactly parallel to the Neder. So Rava likes this answer better because it is in fact the same as the Neder, but the Neder is permitted while the Shevuah does create a prohibition. And we're going to continue this conversation tomorrow where we wonder, well, what exactly does he mean? What exactly does it mean? Maybe he saw a whole bunch of ants. How do you know he was talking about people? And maybe there were that many ants there. So we'll continue that conversation. Baruch Adonai Leolam. Amen ve'amen.